Greetings, my fellow game devs! Welcome to the channel and welcome to the ORK Framework 3 tutorial series for Unity. Regardless if you are a brand new developer just getting into Unity or an existing developer just looking for ways to expedite your product launch and ways to reduce the overall workload that you have to do, I personally think that this would be a great product for you. But in the meantime, let's jump over to the video and we'll get started with all of the tutorials and the how. And hey folks, before we get started, I just want to let you know that in the comments below there will be links to the tutorial that we're going over as well as any downloads that are used in the video. So we'll jump over to it and we'll get started.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get started again today with a new and improved ORK 2D RPG tutorial for Unity 6. Again, this is using ORK Framework 3. So, what we are going to do today is a little different than what we've worked on in the past. You know, we've done the music and we've done the scene transitions, we've set up our combatant, we've set up some animations. That's all in the previous videos. Today, we are going to work on our UI system. We're going to do some UI prefabs for buttons and all sorts of fun stuff. Everyone hates setting up UI. It's always kind of a drag. So let's make it as seamless as possible. Now, the UI system will be split into multiple tutorials to keep them short and focused on certain topics. We'll start with the initial UI system setup in this tutorial. Afterwards, we'll set up some UI boxes, finally set up flying texts, and at a later time, we'll also add a battle HUD to show information for our players. So for now, let's go ahead and set up the system, the UI system in the editor, the TextMesh Pro in Unity, the environment scene for prefab editing, some input prefabs, the UI layers, and the UI animation, and the schematics. So for the initial UI setup, we're going to change the UI system. So to do that, we're going to go under Mechanism, we're going to go under UI, and we're going to go under the UI systems here. Now the UI system type is presently set to none. We're going to set this to Unity UI. You're going to get a pop-up that says changing the UI system will replace and change multiple settings in different parts of the framework. You'll have to revisit multiple settings like your UI layers and UI boxes. The previous settings will not be restored if you change back to the previous UI system. In some cases, it can happen that showing this confirmation dialog causes an error, mostly Mac. If that's the case, disable the show confirmation dialog options above the UI system's type setting. So this little box right here. So we're going to hit OK. And you can see that our default screen size is 1920 by 1080. We're going to use that screen size for what we're working on. If you have a different screen size, the placement will be a little different, but the functionality will be the same. So before we get started, let's go ahead and save our settings. When this is done, let's go ahead and get the TextMesh Pro set up. Now, if you have not already done so, you're going to go to Window, TextMesh Pro, import the essential TMP resources, and hit Import. Alright, so we have the TMP stuff imported, and you can see that we get a error down here. Unable to update the following assemblies. Gaming is Love, Mechanism, name, Mechanism 2, Unity Editor. This is because of how my PC is set up. It's not a game-breaking bug or anything like that. It just happens. So if we go under Project, though, we want to update a couple resources. So let's go under the Tutorial Assets. We'll go under Font. And we're going to defoul the font assets. Now we can change these in the inspector if we need to. but we're not going to make any tweaks here. We're going to do that later on. The tutorial assets, they include this font, okay? But we need to let the TMP know about it and set up our default font and sprite. So we're going to go to the assets and we're going to open up TextMesh Pro and we're going to go to resources and we're going to go to settings. So what we need to change is the default asset here. So we click on this and we're going to use the triple F forward. This is the one that comes with the tutorial assets. And the default icons need to be set as right here. So the default sprite assets, we're going to change this to icons. Now, let's set up our UI environment scene. So what we're going to do is we're going to jump to the scenes folder and we can delete sample scene. We don't need that anymore. We're going to right click, we're going to create a scene, and we're going to call this scene the UI environment, right like that. And we're going to open it up. Before we change out of here, let's go ahead and save our settings. No changes were made, no data saved. It's because we already did it. So in the scene, what we're going to do is we're going to right click, we're going to go to Machinum, we're going to go up to UI, and we're going to load a canvas. Now this creates the canvas with the same setup as it'd be running in the game when not using a canvas prefab. It'll use a canvas scaler to scale content to different resolutions and aspect ratios. Creating the ORK UI via the context menu will make sure it's placed on a canvas that fits the UI setup for your project, using the same canvas setup that we just created. Now we'll save the scene. Now we need to use it for prefabs. So let's go up to Edit and then down to Project Settings. And in Project Settings, we need to go to the Editor tab. From here, we're going to scroll down and we're going to find UI environment right here. And we need to put the scene asset in. So you can either click the little box here and find it, or just drag it up right like that. And then we can close the project settings windows. Now, when editing a UI prefab, for example, a box or an input, they're going to use this scene and its canvas, making sure that their placement and size remains correct. So with our initial UI system setup finished, we can now get to setting up prefabs for our inputs, buttons, toggles, sliders, text fields, etc. While we only use buttons in this series, you should always set up different input variants to have them available when you need them. Now, we are going to do a tutorial on that here as well, and we'll probably do a couple of those before we continue with developing the game. But we're going to create our prefabs in the UI environment scene we set up, but remember to also remove the created game objects from the canvas afterwards. That way we don't have it part of our prefab scene. Now, we can create ready-to-use input setups using the scene hierarchy context menu. So we have a UI box input buttons and input value. So let's go ahead and create a button. So we're going to select the canvas item. We're going to, and we'll just go like this. We'll focus on it here so you can see it a little better. So we're going to right click. We're going to go down to Machinum. Whoops. We're going to go to UI box and we are going to create an input button. And let's create a choice info button. Now, this creates a button with additional content for our information to be added. It uses the content ID info. Now, this is already set up for us, so we don't really have to worry about anything. So if we zoom in on this. This is what we got here. So the source image is set to UI sprite. Let's click on this and let's type in button simple. There we go. Now this button comes with a layout element. Oh, excuse me. Here we go. So our layout element. Let's set the minimum height to 50. Makes it a little bit bigger, right? And then we're going to work on the TextMesh Pro element of it. But as you can see, the TextMesh Pro is not on here. The reason for that is we have to expand the button. And you can see that we have main content and info content. So we're going to go into the main content first. And we're going to go to text. And we're going to scroll down to the vertex color. So we're going to select a white color with full alpha. So depending on how you have this set up, this should be 255 or 1. That's going to give you the full alpha right here. And then we're going to drag this little slider up to full white. So that's 255 on everything. And then we're also going to go over here to the info content and we're going to do the exact same thing. There we go, 255 on everything. So we now have a choice info button that's created. Let's go ahead and make a new folder, create folder, and let's call it prefabs. Now again, I'm kind of crazy when it comes to organization. So I'm going to create under prefabs a folder called UI, and then I'm going to create another prefab folder under that that's called buttons. And then I am going to store all of my buttons right there. And we're going to just go ahead and delete this. Now, we're not going to use this button, but let's go ahead and set it up. So we're going to right click again, Machinum, UI box, a tab button, and we'll change the image again to the button symbol. We'll change the text to a full alpha white, and we'll drag it down. We'll also go ahead, oh, and one thing we forgot to do, sorry. We forgot to set the minimum size. So let's go back here real quick. Drag that back in there. We go to the layout element right here that's minimized up and set that to 50. And then overrides, apply all, because we want that to be applied to all the tab buttons in the game. The other thing that we can do with the tab button is we can make a few tweaks to it. So let's actually do that now, and then we'll update it again. Let's go into the horizontal layout group. And let's open up the padding. And for the padding, let's go ahead and set the left, right, top, and bottom all to 10. And we'll leave spacing at 5. That's okay. So again, overrides, apply all. So now this has that fully applied to it. I think the other thing that we should do, let's go to text and let's make sure it's all aligned in the middle, which it is. So we're good. Let's go ahead and create another button, Machinum UI box. This one is going to be, excuse me, we're going to do a toggle box. So this one is not necessarily listed the way you would think. So you've got input button, input value. This is the one where it takes a second to find. So we'll create toggle. Let's go ahead and expand that. And we'll just click all of these and hold Alt and push right. And you can see what we have here. We've got this button expanded out so you can see what we've got. So let's go ahead and double check how everything looks here. That looks good. Toggle, that all looks good. Check mark for the image. Main text, it's set to a full white. We do not want this one aligned to the middle, going this way. Or sorry, going this way. So if you watch the movement, if we adjust it, you'll see how it moves it over here further. We don't want that. We want to keep it to the left, but aligned to the middle. All of that looks good, so let's go ahead and drag our toggle button down. We can get rid of that. Let's create a text input. So we're going to go back into Macinum. We're going to go back into UI box. We're going to go input value right here, and then we'll go down to text input. Now we don't need to make any prefabs, so we'll just create, or any changes to this, so we'll just keep it as is. We'll drag it down, and we'll delete it. We'll create an int slider. So Macinum, UI box, input value, int slider. Again, we don't need to make any adjustments to this, so we can just go ahead and create the prefab. And then we'll go one more time, Macinum, UI box, value, float slider with value. Again, no adjustments need to be made, so just go ahead and prefab it. Now, continuing on with the UI setup, let's go ahead back into Macinum, back into the UI tab, and back into the UI Systems tab. Now, let's go to the default prefabs. So you notice we've got button, tab, bool, string, int, float, dropdown. We don't need to do the dropdown, that's okay. One thing to note, the bool input is your toggle. True or false, right? Choice info for the standard button. Tab button is your tab button. String input is listed as text input. Typically a string would be a text value, right? Your int slider is your int input, and your float slider is your float input. And like we said, we don't need to worry about the drop down for now. So let's go ahead and adjust some layers. Now UI layers are used to order your UI content, boxes, HUDs, example. A higher layer in the list will display the content above the lower layer. A new project comes with 3 layers already set up. So if we go into UI layers, you can see we have flying text, layer 1, and screen fader. The flying text layer is set to display flying text for damage numbers, etc. We're going to set them up later. The screen fade layer is set up to, well, fade the screen, fading to black when we change scenes. So we're going to go to the background layer, and we're going to make one. So we're going to add this layer, and let's call it background. And let's go ahead and move that right up between flying text and layer 1. We're also going to make a HUD layer. So let's make a new layer, call that HUD, and we're going to set it between layer 1 and screen fader. We're going to save the changes, and we're going to go ahead and create some schematics. So the first one that we're going to do is a fade in schematic. So to get there again, we're going to go to schematics, and we're going to go ahead and right click, and we're going to change UI color. Go ahead and connect those up real fast. So for the fade, set it to fade. We need to enable the weight, and you'll see that we already have a time in second 0.25. Let's change that to 0.2. The math function is fine. Interpolation is linear. That's fine. That's what we want. fade to alpha, or fade the alpha is what we want. We want to make sure red, green, and blue, your standard RGBs, are disabled. The start color, we want to select a color with no alpha value. So let's click on start color and just drag this to 0 if it's not. And the in color, we want at 255, which it already is. And we can use black. We can change that later on. We need to have the data key set to UI and the data origin set to local. So for the most part, this is already set up for you. That's it. So let's go ahead and save the schematic under our schematics folder, and we'll call this one UI fade in. All right, so we're just going to reverse this. So we're going to keep all of this here as we want. So let's go back to here, and let's just change the start and end. So 255 and 0. Now, super important here, do not hit save schematic. Hit save schematic as, and we'll call this one UI fade out. If you did it the other way, it would wind up just replacing the previous save schematic, the fade in that you did. So that being said, that's it. We're all done. The UI has the basic setup on there now. If anybody has questions, please feel free to shoot them to me in the comments. Message me on any of my social medias, or jump in the Discord, join the Gamers Paradise community, and you can jump down to the sticks and ask your questions there. If you have not done so, go ahead and slap that like button, slap that subscribe button, and hit that little notification bell so you get notified. As always, all of the links for the tutorial will be in the description, as well as the links for my social media. So you guys have a great night, and until next time, happy coding.
Thanks for checking out this video for the ORK Framework tutorial series. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please feel free to throw a question down in that comment box, or you can hop into any of the live streams and catch me live and ask me live while I'm there. If this video did help you out in any way, shape, fashion, or form, make sure to smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell. That being said, I hope you guys have an amazing day. Good luck on all of your future projects. And until next time, happy developing.